Join me as we learn Chitas 4, Shabbos, the seventh Torah reading of Parshas Vayeishev, chapter 40, verse 1. Yesterday we read as Yosef was incarcerated because he was framed by the wife of Potiphar. The Torah told us that even while he was in prison, he was in charge of the people in the prison, and he was successful in everything he did. Today's Torah reading tells us about the episodes of Yosef while in prison. Chapter 40, verse 1. And it was after the events that we just learned about. The Egyptian king's cupbearer sinned and offended their master, who was Pharaoh, and the baker, to their master, the king of Mitzrayim. Rashi, after these following events, so Rashi explains as follows. What does this mean? Lefi, this is coming after the story of the wife of Potiphar, because one event led to the other. Because the wife of Potiphar, she then caused the tzaddik, which was Yosef, and she then embarrassed him in front of everybody, meaning that the wife of Potiphar said that this woman, that what he did against her, and therefore she started getting people to say ill against Yosef. So therefore, as not to elaborate, and that people to take away from the evil that which she was trying to spread about the bad about Yosef, therefore God tells us about the bad and the terrible things of the events of the sins of the butler and the baker. Sheyifnu alayim, to talk about them, v'lo elav, and not about him. V'oid shetov yarvach l'tzadik al yedayim. Not only that their peace and their blessing will come, which he later on goes to interpret their dreams, as we see later on, comes because of Yosef, and Yosef's eventual release from prison and led to him being the viceroy of Egypt also comes because of this event. So you see the event of the seduction of the wife of Pharaoh that led Yosef to be in prison. And because of that, they were talking negatively about Yosef. This brought us to the events to talk about the butler and the baker being in prison, and eventually to Yosef's greatness that he is appointed the viceroy of Egypt. Chatu, they sinned. What was the sin they did? So Rashi explains, Zeh, the butler, nimtzo zvuv b'piyoli petirin shaloi. They found a fly in the cup that he would give to Pharaoh, or that he would give him to drink from. After he would come out of the bathhouse, they would give him something to drink, and this cup that he gave him to drink had in it a fly. V'zeh, and the baker, nimtza tzreir, a little stone, was found but gluskin shaloi, in the bread that he baked for the king. The oife, the baker, as pas pelach, he's the one that used to bake the bread of the king. Why doesn't he have to explain this? The only time you bake is usually you refer to as bread. Ubilaz pishter. Verse 2. And Pari got upset at his two servants, and therefore, who were the two servants? Al-Sara Mashkin, on the butler, Al-Sara Oifim, and on the chief baker. And he placed them, where did he place them? In prison, and they were placed into the prison of the house of the chief butcher, the same prison, to the same prison where Yosef was incarcerated. So Pharaoh placed them in prison where the butcher was in charge of that prison. That exact same prison is where Yosef was. Verse 4. And the chief butcher assigned Yosef to be in charge of them, and to attend to them, and they were there in prison for a year. Rashi, and he put them in charge, to be together with them, to attend to them. And they were days in the prison. Generally, when it just says the word days, it refers to 12 months, and they were a year in prison. Verse 5. And they both had a dream. One night, the two of them, the Egyptian butler and baker, both had a dream. Each one had a dream, b'layla echad on the same night. Each person, each one of them, according to their interpretation of their dream, they dreamt. The butler and the baker, which were to the king of Egypt, which were incarcerated in the prison there. That means these two, the butler and the baker, both had a dream, and their dream, with their interpretation, as we're going to see, Rashi explains. This was not one dream that they both had. They both had a dream, each one with his own dream. This is the simple interpretation. The Medrash says, each one had a dream of the other guy's dream. He dreamt what the other guy dreamt, and the interpretation of the other one. And therefore it says, that's why the baker saw. Later on, it says that the baker saw that Yosef interpreted the dream good. How did he know it was a good interpretation? Because he was the one that dreamt the interpretation, and therefore, when he heard him say the interpretation for the butler's dream, he says that was correct because he knew that he saw the interpretation in his own dream. Each one dreamt something which was similar as well to the interpretation of what the dream would be, of what will come to them, as Yosef later on explains to them what their dreams are. Verse 6. And Yosef came to them in the morning. And he saw and he saw that they were in a melancholy mood, that they were sad. Verse 6. Zoyafim. What does the word Zoyafim mean? Atsevim, melancholy. Kemoy, like we find Sar v'Zoif, that the king came back and he was like in a sad mood. Zaf Hashem he got upset. Or in a sad mood, despondent. Vayishal, and he asked them, Esrise Fari, the servants of Pharaoh, Asher ite b'mishmer, that were together with him in custody, the Beis Adonov, in the house of his master. Lamer saying, Madua, why? Penechem roim ayoim, why your face is so downcast today? Verse 8. Vayomiru in love, and they told him, Chaloim chalomnu, we both had a dream, we each had a dream. And we don't have an interpretation. There's no one to interpret it for us. So Yosef told them, surely the interpretations belong to God. Tell them to me, tell me your dreams. Well, they had nothing to lose, so therefore, and the cupbearer told his dreams to Yosef. And he said, in my dream, and there was a vine before me. Then he continues. Uba-gefen, and on the vine, shloisha sarigim, there were 3 branches. V'hike peirachas also, and it seemed as if they were budding. Nitza, then it blossomed. Hivshilu, its eshkelisa anavim, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Rashi explains the detail of this dream, and what is he telling us about the different clusters of grapes and how they happened. Verse 10, Rashi. Sarigim, zmoiris arukes shekoirin viditz, means long branches which are called viditz in Old French. V'hike peirachas, what does this mean? And it appeared to be blossoming. Was it blossoming? So doimel peirachas, it appeared to be blossoming. Means, v'hike peirachas nidmoli b'chaloimi kili peirachas. It appeared to me in my dream as if it was blossoming. And after it blossoms, what does it do? Ol sanitza, it produces a bud. And from there, v'nasu smodar, it forms into small unripe grapes. Smodar is what we would call in Old French, espenir. After that, acharkach, hifshilu, then what happens is they blossomed and they brought it into hifshilu, they ripen and they come into flowers. V'hikat afrachas apikas lavavin. As the Unkla says, this is like a bud of a more advanced stage. Ad kan targum shol peirachas. Over here is now what we learned is what the translation of the word peirachas means. Neitz gadol mi perach. It is a more advanced stage of the blossoming. Kediksiv uboiser goimel yianitza. As it becomes, as it says in Yeshaya, it produced blossoms. It becomes a ripened grape. We also find that later on in the book of Bamidbar, when it talks about the staff of the almond, the Torah uses the terminology, it produced blossoms, and only then did it sprout some buds. So Rashi is telling us what this word peirachas means, simply meaning blossoming. Ve'eschat, like the Targum explains, and I squeezed. We have the same terminology in the Mishnah of V'harbe Yashul B'Lashon Mishnah. Verse 11. Verse 11, V'kois pari biyadi. And he continues the dream. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. Then what did I do? And I took the grapes, and I squeezed their juice into Pharaoh's cup. And then I placed the cup on Pharaoh's hand. Verse 12. And Yosef now starts to explain the dream. This is the interpretation of your dream. These 3 branches symbolize 3 days. Rashi, meaning this is a sign for the next 3 days. Rashi continues, there's a lot of midrashic explanations and interpretations that are here in the esoteric meanings of these dreams. Now, Yosef continues with the dream on text 13 and its interpretation. In another 3 days, in 3 days' time, Pharaoh will take into account who you are. And he will restore you to your original position. And you will then place Pharaoh's cup in your hand, like you always used to do, that you were the one that served him his drinks. Verse 13, Lashin Cheshbon, he'll take into account, he'll realize that you're missing, and therefore he'll say, okay, back to your original job, when he'll count, he's going to see all the different servants that he has that are there attending to him in his meal. Yimna, he'll count you amongst them, and he'll say, I want him back to be able to bring the cups to be my butler. Kanecha, hakan shalach, basi shalcha, mishafecha, your place, your stature, and your position that you were until now. 14. But Yosef continues, I am so sure you're going to be back to your position, and therefore you're going to have influence, that you're going to be able to see Pharaoh all the time by the meal. Therefore I ask of you, therefore I ask you should remember the same way keep in mind that as things will be going well for you, like things will be going good for you, and you will do good for me. These kartani el Paro, you'll mention me to Paro, and he'll take me out of this building, this prison. Rashi, verse 14, the same way that you will see that things are going good for you, and you're going to keep in mind when things are going, because things will be going well, like my interpretation, and you're going to hear and you're going to see that what I said is true, therefore please remember me as well. The word novi here, means please. Now, and he continues to say, why am I stuck in this home? Because I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. And here as well, I did nothing wrong. That they put me in this dungeon. Verse 16. Now that the baker saw that Yosef has interpreted the dreams well. And remember, we said before that the baker was the one that dreamt the interpretations as well, according to one of the interpretations. Yosef, so he tells Yosef, me too, in my dream. I likewise had a dream. And in there was, and there were 3 wicker baskets on my head. Salih chayri, so Rashi explains what does it mean. Salim shel nitzorim klufim. 3 wicker baskets, asurim choyrim choyrim, because they're made like holes and woven one into the other, and they have like holes in them. But where we are, there's a lot of these kinds of baskets. It is customary that the people that sell bread, these are bread baskets, and it's very common that they put their bread in such kind of baskets. Verse 17. And from the top basket, Mikol Michael Pari, there was all kinds of good baked goods. Baked goods, and the birds were eating from them. Minasal, from the baskets, that was above my head. Vayan Yosef, and Yosef answered. Vayomer, and he said, Zesep Yisrein, this is your interpretation. Shleisha Shasalim, these 3 baskets, Shleisha Yamim means 3 days. V'yoy Shleisha Yamim, in another 3 days, Yisafari, in 3 days' time, Yisafari Yisreishcha, Pharaoh will then, Yisafari Yisreishcha Me'alecha, Pharaoh will then decapitate you, V'saleis Chalaetz, and he will hang your corpse on a gallows. V'ochal ha'ifes V'sorcha Me'alecha, and the birds will eat your flesh. Not as exciting as the way he interpreted the dream for the butler. Verse 20. And it was the 3rd day. Yom hu ledas aspari, and it was the birthday of Pharaoh. And he made a feast for all his servants. And he appointed the Saramashkin, the butler, back to his position, as well as the baker amongst his servants, amongst everybody else available to serve him. Rashi, Yom Uledas Pari. So Rashi over here has to tell us, what does this mean, Yom Uledas? Even though today everybody knows what a Yom Uledas is, a birthday, but this is the first time that a birthday is even mentioned in the Torah. And therefore Rashi tells us, Yom Leidasai, the day of his birth, they call it Yom Genusia, a special day, the day of his birthday, Lashon Uledas, the day that he was given birth. A child is not born on their own. There are other people that help out. For example, Shachaya, the midwife. Mialedes, as Isha helps with her training, is there to help the woman give birth. Therefore, a midwife is called one who gives birth, causes birth. We find this all the other places as well. And born on the day that you were born. After it was washed out, it was done through others. What this means is, why is it called who led us given birth? Because that's the way the child, though it's the day the child was born, but he was given birth, somebody else brought him into this world. Interestingly enough, the first time and the only time that a birthday party is mentioned in the Torah is concerning Pharaoh in this exact spot. It is for that reason that until the Rebbe came out with the concept of celebrating birthdays, it was something that was shunned and even discussed in many rabbinic commentators and responses of their lack of celebrating a birthday as something special and unique. And the Rebbe showed us that celebrating a birthday is a special time where we celebrate our purpose in life and our Rosh Hashanah of the reason why we were created. Verse 21. And the butler was given back his position, was put back on his position to continue to be the butler for Pharaoh. And he placed the cup on Pharaoh's hand. Rashi Vayisa Esroish from the previous verse, and he put the butler and baker back. Monam, he counted them in Shar Avadav together with the rest of his servants. He would count the names and mention the names of all his servants that he would like that should be there by his meal. That they should serve him at his meal. And he mentioned those as well together with them. Like we find later on when we use the terminology to count the Jewish people. It also says su'u, lift up the heads, which means lashon minyan, to count them. Verse 22, and the baker was hung, kasher was hanged, kasher pasar lam Yosef, as Yosef interpreted to them, that the butler would be given back his position, back to his original spot, and the baker will be hanged. However, the butler did not remember Yosef, and he forgot about him. Rashi, that day that he was back in his original position, he forgot, already his moment he left in the prison, he already forgot about Yosef. It didn't take long for him to forget who and what Yosef did for him. If you don't remember somebody, so then you forget about them. Not only that day did he forget about them, but even later on, he forgot them as well, even after a length of time. And as Rashi continues, because Yosef depended on the butler that he should remember him, and because of that he thought he's going to get out of prison. He had to be in prison another 2 years. He was only meant to be there for 10 years. Now he's going to be there for another 2 years. As it says in Tehillim, chapter 40, lucky is the man who puts his trust in God and doesn't put it on the humans. And he did not put his trust on Egypt, who is called Rahav. And he just should have put his faith in God. One may ask, what did Yosef do wrong? Isn't a person supposed to do his due diligence? And this was the effort that he had at the time, was to do the due diligence and ask the butler to remember. However, Yosef, who saw his life, that it was all by divine providence, that he was in Egypt by divine providence, and he saw that everything that happened to him, God was making him successful, should have had a greater intuition and recognized that he had a purpose while he was in prison and not put his dependency on a human being. As well as from Yosef, it demanded a greater measure of faith as well. This concludes the seventh Torah reading of Parshas Vayeishev.